I think people just take it for granted, like you're saying, it's not really that bad. And it's not until, I feel like it's not until you do have a health crisis. You might not even know that you're having a health crisis, but all of a sudden it gets to a point that could be a point of no return. And then you begin to realize, oh my God, I shouldn't have been eating that. I think that's when most people decide to make a change, which is a shame because there's so much of life to live.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Meat Medic podcast. Today I'm joined by my very special guest, Lynda Rose, who has a great health journey that she wants to share with us and everything that she's learned since then and what she's doing with that knowledge now. So Lynda, maybe you could give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's my pleasure as well to share some information because I know sharing of information on different levels gets the story out to different types of people. So I live in Perth. I have 4 grown children and 6 little grandbabies. I live on a bit of acreage. I began my health journey, I am going to say in 2000, probably was before 2011, because first of all I had Hashimoto's problems, and then I developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2011. Which, of course, sent me on the spiraling journey of why has this happened? What can I do to stop this from being worse than it is? And I just ended up, through that treatment, I ended up losing my spleen. Big, long journey, lots of lessons along the way, but it kind of sent me into the tunnel of nutrition, and I ended up doing a Bachelor of Nutrition with Torrens. I finished that only about 18 months ago because it ended up being a bit protracted for other reasons. And so I'm just in Perth trying to spread the message and get people to listen to the freedom that nutrition can bring.
Yeah, wow. I mean, absolutely. I think freedom is a great word, and we'll get into what you're doing diet wise soon. But certainly, a lot of people on carnivore diet, and this obviously is mainly based around carnivore, find freedom. I've certainly found freedom myself. I've had my own health issues and dietary issues, and we can talk about those, of course, if we want to. But yeah, freedom is a really, really good word. So your journey started really from your own kind of personal health experience.
It sure did. And I guess for me, I don't know how much people know about non-Hodgkin's. My kind of non-Hodgkin's is an indolent kind of non-Hodgkin's, so it's supposed to always be present in my body. But I haven't had any other further issues. I had treatment that took up probably 5 years of my life, which people complain about the price of food and how much the carnivore diet might cost you in effect to buy the food in the first place, but you can't ever pay for those 5 years that you lose in hospitals, having x-rays, having CT scans, having blood tests, going back for treatments, coming home, all the stress and the pressure that's involved with going through that journey. If we could just stop ourselves from having that by eating, nutrient-dense foods in the first place, then it would really make our life a bit more simple. You can't marry up the cost of your health to the cost of food is probably what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and certainly cost of food is an issue for a lot of people nowadays. We know that, of course, with inflation, rocketing prices. I went to, I don't know if it was a typo or not, I went to Costco the other day and it was something like $38 a kilo for watermelon. I hope that was a typo. But
I hope it was. Yeah, because that's meat. That's meat
prices. I know. I mean, we kind of looked at that and we went, yeah, that might not actually be a typo. Probably was, but yeah, you kind of when you start to think that might not actually be a typo, perhaps it shows you the level it is, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, cost of living, of course, is a big issue, and cost of food is a big issue. And I have this conversation with some people, but you're absolutely right that nutrient dense food, when cost of living is an issue, actually we should be seeking out that nutrient dense food. We should be spending the money where it is best placed to be spent. And ultimately, a lot of people will end up spending less money if they actually did that.
That's what I've found, because I think I mentioned to you I've started to move more into the carnivore space,
Mm.
which is a new place for me. So I've noticed that if I do eat a nice big round fat piece of sirloin, or one of those what are they, tomahawk steaks, that's all you need to eat pretty much for the day, right? It fills you up. So I guess I can buy one of those steaks for around $15 maybe for per steak. So if you think you haven't eaten breakfast and you haven't gone out for a coffee and you don't eat much for dinner, then you're not doing too bad with your food, from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And actually, when we switched to carnivore, I mean, I'm doing full carnivore,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
kind of
good.
pure carnivore.
Sure.
My wife is more animal based because she's pregnant at the moment. She's
Oh,
not really keen to do full
no.
carnivore,
Yep.
and it's not officially recommended. Anyone out there that's screaming in the comments already, not officially recommended for pregnancy. My kids, they're also not full carnivore because again, not recommended for kids. They're predominantly animal based as well. But
Mm-mm.
our food bill went down actually quite significantly. We
Mm.
saved probably a third of our food bill, I would estimate,
Mm-mm.
which is significant. I mean, that's $300-400 a month with a family of five.
That
That's
is a
pretty
lot.
significant
That
saving there.
is,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you just mainly eat one meal a day?
Some days. Some days. It depends on when I bought my protein and when I'm not rushing out somewhere else and did I have time to cook it. Those kind of days, I'm pretty much eating one meal a day, and maybe just a light dinner, like a couple of boiled eggs. If I decide that I'm hungry, that's all I'll have. I teach Pilates a few nights a week, so those nights I tend to have the bigger lunch, and then I don't have dinner. So that's 2 nights of the week I don't tend to eat dinner. Um, yeah, that's how it's working for me at the minute. Yeah.
Yeah, and you find that's working well for you with
Well,
your health issues and your busy
yeah, I
life
can
and so on.
see. Well, I can see as well. I've gone down the pathway of doing some more resistance training and some weight training and trying to change my body composition around, because I've noticed, obviously, teaching Pilates, I need to have a bit more strength than my clients because I have to keep ahead of them in the pack. But I've noticed the more protein I eat, the more responsive my body is to put on a little bit more muscle strength. I can't see it yet. It's only been probably since the end of December that I've started playing with this a little bit. But I feel stronger. Like I can hold my plank for a
Mm.
bit longer and I can, stand on one leg a bit longer than I used to be able to. It's just little increments that I'm noticing. My sleep is fantastic. I'm sleeping 8, 9 hours a night. It's just, and I don't have those cravings of, oh, did I want to have an extra meal? Am I craving something savory because I eat that meat with salt? So my body's not really craving like it
Mm.
used to. So I think anybody's health journey, if I can say, is so unique to them. Because for me, my health journey probably started when I got sick in 2011, and I kind of tried this and tried that. And I know for me, releasing sugar out of my intake was difficult. Like, you don't realize how much you're dependent on sugar until you don't have it in your diet anymore. And now I don't crave it at all. I'm not after that sweet biscuit with my tea. That's been a long time that has changed. But I think the more you go down the journey and the more you see your body responding to the better nutrients that you're putting in it, the much easier it is to make the choice to eat the better food in the first place. It's a real,
Mm.
I don't know what's the egg before the chicken kind of a thing, but you just have to learn what your body responds to and what's best for you, because it might be different for me, for somebody else. So I feel like it's a really unique journey. Would you say that's fair?
I'd say that's very fair.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
I'd say that's very, very fair. And I think we all have a one generic kind of basis for our diet. We're all human beings. We're all one species, but I think there's definitely nuances.
mm,
And this is when because unless you raise you genetically identical twins, separate them from birth, and so on, and raise them in a lab, like exactly the same, conditions, same stress, same music, same birds tweeting outside. I mean, we've all had it's that butterfly effect, the compound effect of things that happen in our lives. There's going to be differences. We all have different medical conditions. We're all at different stages of metabolic health and so forth. So there's going to be differences in how people respond to certain foods, different mentalities, different ways that they manage that food, and food addictions and difficulties with eating and so on. So no, I think that's very, very fair to say that we all need to find our own journey. We all need to find what works for us. But I think that's the key thing. It's finding what works for us,
Yeah, exactly.
not what somebody else tells you. And this is a problem I had. I just did a recent video, released it yesterday. A bit of a rant about the idea of a balanced diet, quote unquote, and everything is fine in moderation. One of the issues I have with that is most people can't moderate.
No, they
and
can't.
and that's the thing, and that might work for some, but it doesn't work for many. And then they're using that as a framework that's never going to work for them. So they've got to find what actually works for them. So you mentioned that you're kind of getting more into that carnivore space. How did you get into that in the first place?
Right, how did I get into that? That's a great question. So I way back in November, I took part in a study at my local university, and they wanted women of a certain age to partake in this study. And we had to have a DEXA scan and then another DEXA scan 2 weeks later. And on that DEXA scan, I was on the pathways. They had two pathways. They had one that was the intermittent feeding and exercising, or time restricted eating and exercising, and one that was just the time restricted. So I was on the time restricted one, which meant I couldn't eat anything after 5 p.m. because I had to eat 4 hours before I went to bed. That was my last meal. And in that 2 weeks on that DEXA scan, my body apparently, which I found really hard to take and it broke me, had gained 1 kilo of body fat and lost 1 kilo of muscle. So I don't know how that worked. Yeah, so that sent me on a little tyrant because I thought, man, I'm eating keto, I'm making sure I'm eating nutrient dense food. How has this happened? I don't want to lose that muscle and I don't want to put on 1 kilo of body fat. So I somehow stumbled across Dr. Anthony Chaffee on Instagram, and I just went down the story of carnivore diet. It just made sense to me. But I just had to get my head around not having the vegetables on my plate, thinking that I needed to have those greens. And the more I researched, I found that the greens probably weren't helping me and probably were robbing me of nutrients in the digestive process. So that's how that all began. So from November to December, I kind of played around with it a little bit, and that's what I've been doing. I think the hardest thing is when you go out for a meal at a restaurant. I mean, I probably don't even bother doing that anymore because I know I can eat better at home. So that doesn't. I don't bother. I don't want to pay for that meal that I know is probably not great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. When mostly what you cook is just steaks all the time, you get pretty good at cooking them, and then you go out and you realize that you're paying a lot of money for something that's actually not as nice as you could make at home, and it's probably not as good quality either. Yeah, I mean, what you're kind of referring to there, I guess, is anti-nutrients, and we can get into that, of course, and that is a very, very important conversation point. So yeah, I mean, I Dr. Anthony Chaffee is who got me into carnivore. Unknowingly, I just I heard him at the Low Carb Down Under 2022, and
yeah,
it kind of just made sense. I don't know if it's just the way he talks, the way he says it, I don't know, but anyone out there that's watching or listening that doesn't know who Dr. Anthony Chaffee is, he's a neurosurgical trainee. I think he's still a trainee in Perth, in WA anyway.
Yeah.
He's in ZWA. I don't know if it's Perth or not. But he has a podcast called the Plant Free MD, and he guests on a lot of other podcasts. And he makes a lot of sense. He makes a convincing argument, and he convinced me to try. And within 2 days, I just felt amazing. So, and I've not looked back since.
Yeah, I feel better on the diet for sure, on that way of eating. I'm not going to call it a diet because it's the way of eating, isn't it? It's like the normal way we should be eating. Yeah.
That's it. Absolutely. Let's just backtrack a little bit. So you actually found that you lost muscle on this DEXA scan.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify? Did you do exactly the same before the DEXA scan for both? Because DEXA scans can be fooled.
Can they? I'm glad you're telling me that, because in
They
my
can.
instinct, which I'm trying to think about, my instinct telling me, don't you believe that DEXA scan? It wasn't right. That's what it's telling me. So
Yeah.
I guess for me, not eating after 5 p.m. was a change, and I got dreadful cramps in my calves, and I was drinking my salt and taking on extra calcium to try and alleviate that. So that was a big change for me, was not to eat after 5. Normally my
Yeah. I mean,
dinner's about 6:30.
yeah, they actually can be fooled, and that maybe is a flaw in that study design. They should have kind of made people do exactly the same, for each DEXA scan.
Mm,
Um, really for actually probably a couple of days, because even if you go from, say, like a normal kind of standard diet, you're eating lots of carbs, to then
yep.
a keto diet, you'll probably find you actually gain fat and lose muscle,
Uh,
because the
uh,
DEXA scan is actually, it doesn't tell your body fat percentage or lean body mass by actually scanning. It's still an estimate.
cool.
It's a good estimate, but it's
Yeah.
actually still an estimate, and it
Mm-mm.
estimates your kind of they check your mass, and then they estimate your fat percentage and lean body mass from your muscle mass. Essentially, is my understanding anyway.
Yeah.
So if you've got less muscle glycogen because you're now on a keto diet, or you've actually fasted longer than maybe you did before, you'll appear to have less muscle.
Oh,
So you'll
that's
actually
interesting.
appear to have more fat.
Well,
The other
maybe
thing
that's
is, if you eat like a big burger or something, then it can essentially look like muscle, and then it can tell you've lost more weight than you
ah,
have, because you've got
yeah,
this pound of
mass in
fat,
your
a pound
body.
of muscle in your stomach, and so on.
Oh
So
gosh,
yeah,
okay.
they aren't they actually can be fooled, and so you may not have actually lost
Well, let's hope,
muscle and
because
gained fat.
yeah, because the whole other reason for me to try and eat more in a carnivore sense is because I know as you age, you need to keep your muscle. And that has been prominent in my Pilates
Mm,
classes, because I can see some of my clients who are a bit younger than me can't stand on one leg, and they don't eat enough protein to feed that muscle, because obviously your muscle needs that protein to grow and respond. And if you're protein poor, which most of the normal diet is protein poor, normal diet, then you'll
mm.
lose muscle. You won't regain or keep that muscle on your skeleton, and as you age, it's quite fraught with danger.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know studies show that the lower your muscle mass, the more likely you are to end up in a nursing home.
Mm-mm.
Directly proportional, which nobody wants, really, of
No,
course. And yeah, muscle mass. And I did an episode on this, I think, before. Muscle mass. It's not Muscles are not just for vanity. They
no,
are they are so
it's a health.
important for
Yep.
our health, our
Mm-mm.
metabolic health, our core health. And of course, on a carnivore diet, typically we see people's bone density going up as well as just their
Yes, I
muscle
have
mass,
read that. Yeah.
which of course is very, very important. As we know, hip fractures are a major cause of morbidity and mortality.
Mm-mm.
So very, very important.
Yep.
And yeah, and I often say to my more elderly patients, or even my younger people, actually, I mean, sometimes in their 40s and 50s, they can almost barely get up off the chair by themselves, because
Yeah.
they look okay with their clothes on, but they've just got very little to no muscle mass,
It's
and
called
sarcopenic
yeah,
obesity.
under
Yeah, the
muscled over
so-called
fat.
quote
Yeah.
exactly, quote unquote, skinny fat, we used to call
Yeah.
it.
Mm-mm.
And you can see they're almost struggling to get up off the chair
Mm.
themselves, and they're in their 40s. It's absolutely crazy.
Mm.
But there's a good test. One of the GPs I work with, she does quite a bit of work in, similar to yourself, with yoga. I think it is, maybe not Pilates, but she teaches some kind of older women classes. And yeah, she gets them to do this kind of exercise. I won't demonstrate it, but she gets them to kind of squat, do like a one-legged squat, and
Hard.
basically, if you can't do that, then actually that's not a great
Mm-mm.
place
That's
to be at,
hard.
really.
Yep.
um you mentioned anti-nutrients a moment
Yes.
ago.
Yep.
I wonder if you could maybe expand on that a little bit, just for the audience that maybe is thinking, what on earth is an anti-nutrient?
Anti-nutrients. Well, I have been reading up lately on oxalates in plants. So, as far as I understand, they're a nutrient or a defense mechanism in the plant that the plants put out to stop you or a predator from eating them. And our bodies don't cope well with oxalate loading. My husband's having a bit of trouble with that at the minute, which is why I've been researching about it. So he's now on a low oxalate diet, and finally I have actually got him more into a carnivore type of eating plan, because when you're living in a household and one of you isn't quite on the same pathway, it's a bit tricky to keep making meals. So I'm glad that he's swinging over to my way of thinking, which can only be right. So anti-nutrients, as far as I understand, just don't sit well in your body, and they actually they make your body use more energy to expel them and try and digest them, and they just aren't good for us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, oxalates is a very good example. It's one thing that I talk to a lot of patients about, oxalates, and definitely, if people are wondering what oxalates are, they should go and do some research into it. But yeah, effectively, they're a form of plant toxin, an anti-nutrient, and they can interfere with a lot of processes within the body, and potentially implicated, potentially not proven, but potentially implicated in a lot of health conditions. I know people like Sally Norton,
Yes.
who does a lot of work in
Fantastic.
oxalates,
Yeah.
talk about the risk of breast cancer going up and so on as well, and widespread inflammation and so forth. So they're incredibly important, and they can interfere with a lot of processes and interfere with absorption of nutrients and minerals, hence the term anti-nutrient.
Yeah.
And anyone that's wondering about oxalates should go and have a look up. I think they call themselves the Wizards of Ox, I think on
Oh,
YouTube.
okay. I've only looked at
I think
Sally's site. Yeah.
Sally Norton's part of that tribe. I think there's three of them,
Oh,
three women. I can't remember the other two. I apologize if they're listening to this. But they've got some really good information about oxalates, and oxalates are just one example, of course. I mean, we talk about things like lectins,
oh yes.
gluten.
Gluten.
Lectins are a real problem. Gluten is
Yeah.
a real problem, and gluten is the one that everybody knows about.
Mm-mm.
But people think gluten, it's celiac disease, or it just upsets you a little bit. But gluten can cause real issues with people,
I
and
know.
it's an anti-nutrient.
Before I gave up gluten, which was probably about 9 years ago now, I haven't eaten gluten. Well, that I know of, that I'm aware of. I had psoriasis in my hair. And when I would go to the hairdressers, they couldn't cut my hair properly, and they'd have to cut around. And as soon as I gave up gluten, I would say within a month that was all gone. It was all clear and gone. So gluten for me has been a real, yes, I don't have it anymore, and I don't have the sores in my head or anywhere else. So I was glad that that went away. So that's a good example of an anti-nutrient. I think people just take it for granted, like you're saying, it's not really that bad. And I feel like it's not until you do have a health crisis. You might not even know that you're having a health crisis, but all of a sudden it gets to a point that could be a point of no return. And then you begin to realize, oh my God, I shouldn't have been eating that. I think that's when most people decide to make a change, which is a shame, because there's so much of life to live.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I see it all the time with people.
Yeah.
They almost don't know that they're unwell,
No,
which sounds
no.
odd. But I
Mm-mm.
think people are so used to just feeling unwell, and being told that that's normal. Being told, well, you're just getting old.
Yeah.
You've got kids, you've got grandkids, whatever. Like, you're just old. Just that's what happens. It's normal to go on like
Yeah.
25
Right.
medications by the time you're
Yes.
60, and
I'm amazed how
and
many of my friends
yeah,
are on medications. I'm not on any
yeah,
medications. I don't take anything, and I was turned 60 in December. So it's
right,
hard. Yeah,
yeah.
it's hard for me to watch people that I mix with socially that are, I'm trying to be a leading light or a change, or let them see that you don't have to have sore backs and sore knees and sore whatever's. You can change your diet to help your body heal
Mm.
itself.
Mm. Do you talk to your friends then about what you're doing diet wise?
Yeah, I'm all over it. They are sick and tired of hearing me. But if I go to a restaurant and I just order the steak, they're all like, and then I put butter on it. They're all like, "Oh my God, why are you putting butter on your steak?" And I just, it's even for me, for my kids. I've got 4 grown kids, and they all think I'm a bit strange that I'm this mum that eats differently to them. You just have to. I just can't eat any other way, because I just feel so much better. And as I delve into that carnivore lifestyle, I know that it's only going to improve.
Yeah. What do they say then when you say that, that, well, look at me and kind of look at you. I mean,
Well,
maybe you're not that blunt. I don't know.
no, I'm not that blunt. And do you know what I've found working in with women? I don't know if it's really fair to say or it's generalized, but I mean this from my heart. Women don't see themselves as they are. Like if they have got a bit of an extra muffin tie around their belly, some of them don't notice that it's there. It's a really weird concept to get your head around. They just don't see it. So they don't think they have to change. There's nothing that they need to do, but it's obviously there. Although they don't want to see it or
Yeah.
it's too hard.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's just females. I think that's everyone, really. I think it's so normalized now
Mm-hmm.
that we're overweight. It's normalized that we have pain. It's
Mm.
normalized that we have stress and anxiety and depression.
Mm.
It's normalized
Right.
that we just have to scrape ourselves out of bed in the morning, and this is all normal. And so people don't know that they're not meant to be like that, and so they
Mm-mm.
don't see the need to change because to them
Mm-mm.
it's pretty normal. And
And
unfortunately, this message is reinforced
mm.
when you go to the doctor, you go to see people, you talk to friends, family, and so on. They just say, "Oh, that's just life. That's just normal."
Mm-mm. Exactly.
But it's not. And I don't think we do people we do them a disservice if we tell them that this is normal. So I try and tell them this is not normal. If you choose to stay like this, look, that's your choice, but this is not actually normal. You should, in your 60s, you should feel like a teenager. Really, I mean,
Mm-mm.
genetically, you're barely middle aged.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
shouldn't you
hopefully.
shouldn't be feeling you shouldn't be feeling like you're just in God's waiting room, kind of just waiting to
But
to to
but
croak.
lots of people have that point of view, don't they? Lots of people have that
They
point of
do.
view. Oh, I'm just getting old, and I think, well, are you really? But can you,
Yeah.
you can change this around, and it's. I think as well for some people, the change around is so hard. So the social norms get to them, and they think they've got to do this and they have to eat that, and they've got to be polite to people and
Mm,
not say, "I'm not having that on my plate." Until
yeah.
we can get past those ideologies, we're a bit stuck.
That's right. We are. But also, I think a lot of people, and I'm sure there's people out there listening, saying, "Yeah, I know, but I've tried it all. I've done it all,
Yes,
and it never
yes.
works."
Mm,
And I think that's a big part of the problem as well. Is that people, and I see it all the time. I'm sure you see it all the time as well. People they've tried to
yes,
lose
they
weight. They've
have. They've
tried to be
tried their
healthy.
hardest.
They've tried, but nothing ever seems to work, and so
Mm-mm,
they give up. And
mm-mm.
then when they're presented with this thing of, well, actually you can be healthy, you can lose weight, you can feel good, they don't believe that they can,
No,
because their
it's
truth, their
not.
reality
Yeah.
is that they've tried it, and they can't. They've been
Mm-mm.
shown repeatedly that it just
Yes,
can't work.
absolutely.
Um, so it can be very difficult to then get them on board.
Mm.
Um, so you spoke to your family about it as well. I mean, what do your kids kind of think then of you
Well,
eating this kind of more carnivore, animal based
well,
diet?
it's funny because we're at Christmas time and we're all away on a camping holiday, me and my two daughters, and the joke was that my catchphrase was, "How many carbs has it got in that?" Or how many carbs are you putting on my plate? That was my title for the day. And then the next thing was they decided next year, because we always do a secret Santa for Christmas, and they said next year we're going to do a secret T-shirt. We're going to get T-shirts printed with a slogan about the person for the T-shirt, and mine was going to be just eat meat, or have you got meat in your diet, or eat more meat, or because I was loading everyone's plates up with extra meat. So it's a bit of a standing joke. And then I've got one son who was vegetarian ages ago. He's now eating meat and he looks much healthier. He wouldn't probably appreciate me saying that, but he does. And he kind of looks at me sideways like, "What are you doing? And you're not having enough veggies on your plate." He's trying to load me up. So it's difficult, but I just laugh them off. Yeah, for my family, I
Yeah,
just laugh them off. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, surely they must appreciate though that you are healthy, that you
Yeah.
feel great, that you're not
Mm-mm.
on loads of medications, yet
Mm-mm-mm.
they still kind of say, is this okay?
Yeah, they're
Isn't that
still
interesting?
questioning. It is. It's very interesting. And it's hard for me to watch what they're eating because I think, oh man, if I was 35 and I knew what I knew, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be doing this. And, how much stronger would I be at 60 if I followed that pathway? It's just, for me, it's like writing on the wall. This is what you have to do, but it's hard to get that message across. You just have to be an example and try and do your best.
I think you're right. I think that's the best way, is just lead by example, show them how healthy you can be, show people that there isn't really a downside to this way of eating, at least as far as we know.
Mm-mm.
And then the proof's in the pudding, so to speak.
Mm-mm.
You mentioned, of course, if I can go back, that you had a diagnosis of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma,
Yeah.
and you lost your spleen as part of all
Yes.
of that. Maybe you
Yeah.
can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so how old was I? 48. I was 48 and I just found a little lump in my belly, but I didn't really know what it was. And I went to my GP and I got sent off to my specialist pretty quickly, a hematologist who was gorgeous. He's since retired, but he was a really treasure, really lovely old Scottish gentleman, really gentle, which is what I needed. And obviously they realized this lump was actually my spleen. So my spleen was 2 kilos. It was like a carton of milk. I'm going to use that word. And there should be around 80 grams, I believe, about as big as your fist. So it was massive. And it had to come out. So I had no platelets because my spleen was full of all my platelets. I didn't have a clotting factor much in my blood. So I was pretty lucky that I found it. And it was taken out in a massive surgery, and I had 8 weeks to recover before they actually gave me the diagnosis of what type of the lymphoma it was. So it ended up being a marginal zone B splenic lymphoma. And so every year I go for checkups, I go for blood tests. I had to have, I think I had MabThera, which is a type of chemotherapy, but it's more along the immunotherapy base, which I felt more comfortable about having. And it just worked. It just worked for me. It was phenomenal because the actual MabThera hooked onto a protein on the lymphoma cell, a CD20 protein, and it highlighted that cell to my immune system, and it came that then they blow up the cell. That's how it seemed to work. So for me, it worked really well, and I had 2 years of once a month treatment, and then it kind of spread out to once every 6 months, and then nothing. So it took 5 years to go through that plan, and it just shook me. Like, I thought I was pretty healthy. I didn't think there was much wrong with me, and how could that have happened? Which is why I went off and did some studies with Paul Chek. He's a holistic life guru in the US, and learnt about organic foods and connecting back to the earth and being more aware of your surroundings and more in touch with who you are. So I went off on that spiritual journey for a while to find out how I connected to my body and what happened. And then along came the food. The food just come hand in hand. Is that what you wanted to hear?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're. Are you still seeing the hematologist or an
Yeah, I
oncologist
have to
now?
go. Yes, I do. I've spread my visits out to once a year because I feel like once every 6 months comes up too quick. And of course, there's always
Mm,
that apprehension. It's like, oh, I have to go and have
yeah,
that test. But my blood tests are always fine. There's nothing really
good.
crazy with them. And I just keep a positive mindset to try and look after
Yeah,
myself the
good,
best I can. Yeah.
good. Do they know that you're doing a like an animal based carnivore diet now?
It's an interesting story because I've gotten to know my hematologist quite well. So I do put in these little things about what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. And he's had patients that have been on a keto diet, and he said, "Oh, the patients waste away, and it doesn't do them any good." And he doesn't understand about. He doesn't seem to hear me say that your brain needs those fats and your brain feeds on the fats. So every time I go, I've got a 15-minute time slot, and I try and put in a little bit of dietary information to him through that. I've invited him to the low carb roadshow, which we've got coming to Perth. I think you've probably got one coming to Brisbane. I don't know whether he'll come, but yeah. I just have to keep putting my words in his head.
It's a shame, really, isn't it? Because I mean, you would have thought, I mean, being a hematologist, oncologist, they would maybe know a little bit about the mitochondrial theory, metabolic theory of cancer as well, and maybe be exploring that, and at least be a little bit more open, to that. But then again, that's not what we teach in medical school. So
no, you're not, and I
we
understand
teach
that.
it's just drugs. That's it, drugs for everything. So.
Mm.
What was it like having the treatments? Because you said it was more of a immune therapy as opposed to a chemotherapy.
Yeah, so I've got a daughter who at the time was doing an environmental science degree. She started looking into all the vitamins I needed to take, vitamin C, all the combinations of stuff, and she researched. She said, "Mom, you can't have chemotherapy. We're not letting you put that in your veins." And then I said, "Well, no, I've chosen just to have this immunotherapy." And it's frightening as hell. It is frightening as hell because you just don't know what to expect. And I guess even having a PET scan in itself is frightening because that is a radiation, like the needle is the solution. I don't know if you know about PET scans, you probably do. The solution is in a radioactive formula, so the nurses can't even touch that needle, and you're put in a machine with a machine that injects you. The needle goes in, and of course, that needle is full of glucose and radiation. So the cancer cells suck up that glucose. This is when I first realized that sugar was a problem. They suck up that glucose because that's what they feed on. And then the radiation gets drawn into those cells and they become a Christmas tree on your body. And that's where they know where the cancer is. So that was my first feeling about that. But then having the actual treatment myself, you give your arm away, it's strapped into a table, it's strapped down, and in goes the juice that you think is saving you. And you kind of think, is it going to burn? Is it going to hurt? Will I lose my breath? Is my heart going to explode? All of those stresses come around at that time. And then I guess after you've done it 4 or 5 times, it just becomes a bit blasé and you just end up going because you know that it's not going to feel terrible. But I still didn't know what it was doing to the rest of my body. I knew that it was probably attacking the cancer, but I didn't know what it was doing to the rest of my body. And I still
and
don't
that's
know.
and that's without even any of the toxic effects. That's just mentally what it was doing to you.
Yeah, it's
I imagine it
terrible.
must be very scary. And it's interesting you say, of course, there about the glucose being taken up, and that's what we're referring to there with the metabolic theory of cancer,
Yes.
that really they pretty much purely feed on glucose. They lose the ability, cancer cells lose the ability to metabolize ketone bodies. And so by then starving them of glucose, theoretically, we can't say it cures cancer, but potentially it has the ability to then be essentially a perfect chemotherapy with zero side effects to the body and perfect, perfectly working on the cancer cells. But not sure it quite works exactly like that, but potentially, it could. But yeah, I mean, even then the PET scan, as you said, it's kind of, it's like when someone does a CT, or the dentist does an X-ray, and they kind of, oh, don't worry, we're just going to put this thing on your face, and then they kind of all run out of the room and hide behind the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah. It's quite
but
dangerous, but
even more so, not
yeah.
dangerous, but we're just going to stand a mile away just in
Yeah,
case.
just in case.
That's it. It's a shame, really, that the hematologist doesn't seem particularly interested in the diet
I
side.
haven't given
That's
up.
a bit of a
Yeah.
shame, but
Yeah, I haven't
yeah,
given
you're gonna
up.
keep trying to push. Yeah.
I'm going to send him a few articles to read. I've been reading some articles, so he might get a little bit of stuff in his inbox soon. Hopefully his ladies
I
will pass them on.
hopefully they won't just hit delete. I think that's really important now. I mean, as doctors, we should be open to learning. And I said it on an interview I was doing for someone else's podcast last night. I can't remember his name now. I always forget. The CEO of Microsoft.
Oh,
And he says, I can't remember, I never remember his name.
is it Bill Gates? No.
No.
No, somebody else.
After Bill Gates,
Oh,
and he says we should be learn-it-alls, not know-it-alls,
yeah.
because when you're a know-it-all, you're closed to learning new things, and
You
if you learn
have to
it
be.
all,
Yeah.
well, then you can learn it all. And nobody knows everything. I mean, even the most intelligent people in the world know less than 1% of the world's
What
collective
they need
knowledge. I
to
mean,
know. Yeah.
Exactly. So we should be open to learning, especially as doctors. And we all talk about CPD and ongoing, continuing professional development. Yet a lot of us are very closed to hearing new
Mm-hmm.
things, and that's really
Do
the
you hear
definition of
new things though?
CPD.
Like if you go to CPD, do you hear new useful things,
No,
or is it a replay of
you
the old?
don't.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sort
no,
of.
you don't. It's
Mm,
just the same guidelines, the same things that are 20 or 30 years out of date, just repeated. And
mm.
everyone's there studiously taking notes, but they know it all already because it's just repeating what they already know,
I have
which is kind of just pointless.
I've found a couple of lower carb GPs in Perth. One is a carnivore GP, but your patients are so lucky to have you. Like, you're like a gold beacon in your community because they're far and
Thank
few
you for saying.
between. Yeah, it's true though,
Yeah.
because I've watched some of your videos on your website and I think, wow, you're just giving out such phenomenal information and people need to soak it up. And I think for me, as I've gotten older and I've got more time, because now my children have all moved out and gone and on their separate ways, I I'm just like a lifelong student. I just want to know more and more and more and more. And I feel like even movement, like for as you age and making sure that you're moving and you're keeping your joints strong and you're flexible in your body, it reaches into your mindset as well. You have to be always on the
Mm,
lookout for something new and positive and like nutrient dense food and nutrient dense information into your brain as well, because that's otherwise there's nothing. What's your point? You know,
mm.
what's the point? There's so much to know.
Yeah,
There's so
I
much to
agree.
know.
And thank you for saying. I mean, I certainly do try. I'm inspired by my patients, and I'm inspired to do well. For my patients.
Mm,
And if I don't know something, I'll go and try and learn it and do the best I can to help them in
great,
whatever way possible.
good.
And that's what's led me onto this journey and where I am now.
Mm,
Is actually by being open and listening to my patients and taking
mm,
their experiences and then applying them to myself. And like yourself, I mean, I think a lot of people that do this kind of work, like yourself, like myself, like other doctors, it often starts with themselves
yes.
as an experiment. They
Mm,
maybe heard something, or very often their own health journey, and
mm-mm,
then they come across this
absolutely.
this eureka moment, and they can't help but share it. And that sounds exactly like what happened to you.
Yeah.
But you went off and did lots of further learning and studying, and you got your BA, a
Batch.
master's in nutrition,
Just bachelor's. Yeah, bachelor of
bachelor's.
nutrition
Yeah.
with Torrance, but it doesn't allow me that bachelor's degree. Oh, it doesn't allow me to, like, I can't be a dietitian, so I have to spend another 2 years at uni and another $36,000 to be learn something I don't want to learn. Just to get that bit of paper so that doctors will refer to me. So currently, in WA, I'm finding it difficult to get any GPs to really take on board what I've learned because it goes against what they've been told. And we know, Gary Fettke had a hard time when he changed the way he thought, and I guess it's a fear. You didn't find that? You didn't have that issue
Oh
yourself?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You do.
absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Fettke's come up a number of times on this channel.
Yeah.
But for anyone that hasn't listened to previous episodes, so yeah, Gary Fettke is an orthopedic surgeon. I believe he's been practicing again, I think, but
Mm-mm.
he was effectively suspended for about 2 to 2.5 years, I think, because he was
Yes.
advising his patients on low carb diets. And
Mm-mm.
long story short, Dietitians Australia got wind of this and were very unhappy. I gather that the sponsors, Coca-Cola and the sugar companies, also were involved, lobbying very heavily. A lot of pressure to besmirch him and to discredit him, and to kind of put him under the thumb and apply the screws. And then eventually APRA were forced to then suspend him, do an
Oh,
investigation, and
oh,
eventually
yeah.
of course found, under big pressure from a ground movement organized by himself and his wife Belinda,
Yes.
is
Yeah.
my understanding anyway, then got reinstated. But without that, he probably wouldn't have been, and his career would have been over, just for simply advising his patients on a low carbohydrate diet to get healthy, to lose weight, to be healthy, and then not need those surgeries that he was supposedly supposed to be offering them.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a concern. And of course, there's other examples like Tim Noakes, I think, South Africa, if I believe. There's been people in America, the States, the same, all over the world, that have been punished and penalized for daring to kind of speak out against the established sugar kind of consortium, so to speak. Which is such a shame. It's such a crime, really, that
It
they've
is
been
because,
silenced.
so I started my degree with, in about, when did I start my degree? About 2018 or something like that. And I mentioned before I had to stop it and have a bit of a break from it because my daughter actually developed septic shock. And we had a year of her in hospital having rehab, and she lost her lower legs. So now she's a bilateral amputee. And when she was in the gym at Fiona Stanley, one of our major hospitals here, the other people in the gym were mostly men with type 2 diabetes that had also lost their legs. And I thought, how can you, like, to learn to walk again is just, you can't even imagine how difficult that is, one leg, let alone two. But also I'm reminded that you need that upper body strength to help you learn to walk again. But the whole process of having your limb taken and having that physio and all the drugs and the pain and the plastic surgeries and the leg, it's not just, you don't just get up and walk. It's another whole journey of learning to walk again. So if you knew that you could change this or alleviate the pressure or help that type 2 diabetes go away, wouldn't you just change your diet? If that was the cause of your limb amputation and Dr. Fettke was your doctor, wouldn't you do everything you could do to not have that happen? Because that's just another whole story for another time maybe. But yeah, it's just
Yeah,
it was a phenomenal journey, and I guess that has also has put a fire in my belly to stop people from losing their limbs. It's just
yeah,
crazy. It's just madness.
yeah. No,
And
I'm sorry to hear that about
mm,
your daughter. I mean, it
yeah, she's
must have been
amazing.
horrendous.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's great. She drives, she kayaks, she works. She's fabulous. But for these gentlemen that are still in their wheelchairs, can't get out because they can't walk, and it's just a debilitating way to spend the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, exactly. No,
yeah.
you would think that people would be very receptive to that, and I gather that a lot of his patients were, and there wasn't complaints. I think from his patients,
No,
it was
not at all.
other people, colleagues,
Yeah,
and so forth that
yeah,
were complaining, which is
yeah.
just it's just insane.
Mm-mm.
But no, I mean, I see this. Some colleagues are less than uh, less than savory sometimes. When it
Yeah,
comes to then
true.
people, myself, like myself and myself personally, doing this kind of work, speaking outside of the guidelines and so on,
Mm.
even though
Wow.
you get great results, and there's various reasons why people can act in that way. I try and just ignore it for the
Mm.
most part, but
Mm.
it always gnaws in the back of your mind. Am I just going to get struck off?
Ah.
Is my life in danger here for for speaking out and trying to help people the best way I know how. I did interviews with two GPs recently who do similar work to myself, and
Mm.
yeah, they pretty much just basically said like they've pretty much just one just pretty much just left the profession, the other one's on the way out
Ah.
because they're worried about the
Mm.
consequences.
Mm.
I myself am kind of slowly working out of the profession as well, which I don't
Mm.
want to, but it's kind of being driven out almost by the worry, the fear
Mm.
that
Mm.
by helping your patients, then you're putting yourself at risk, which is such a shame.
Mm.
You
Mm. Oh,
mentioned
it's terrible.
yeah, it's terrible. You mentioned, of course, there that you've done this BA in nutrition. So can you not call yourself a nutritionist and
I can,
then
but the
kind of
word
get
nutritionist is not
patients that
really.
way?
It's not really regulated. The word nutritionist. You can do a
Mm,
DoTerra. You can buy the DoTerra oils and become a nutritionist. It's not really
mm,
recognized as a term. So I do. That's what I do. I call myself that. But the GPs want that dietitian. They want that dietitian. Yeah, which isn't, I mean, there are some fantastic low-carb dietitians in the world, and my heart goes out to them, but there are some that just are still on that pathway, and it's not helping people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And this thread came up actually in one of my low carb groups on Facebook. The dietitian basically, recommending up and go, to their patients, and it's just it's processed garbage.
It's almost, if I dare to say,
it's
a malpractice, isn't it, of causing those people to eat crap food.
Almost, and it raises the question. I don't think Sanitarium sponsors kind of Dietetics Australia anymore, but I know they used to. But some of their biggest sponsors have been, sugar companies, processed food companies, drug companies. And it's similar with things like, the American Heart Association, and various organizations around the world. And these are the people that are setting our guidelines, and they're so conflicted.
They are. They are shocking. If you look at the roots of that, I think Lynda Fettke spoke about our food pyramid and how it was developed.
There's a lot of work there.
Shocks me how it came to be. Yeah.
No, it really does. It's really terrible, and it makes you wonder, well, maybe this is why we are in the mess that we're in.
Absolutely.
Because the people that write these guidelines are essentially the people making this garbage food, or the ones that are cleaning up afterwards.
Yes.
And making money out of people's sickness. There's an incentive to keep people eating bad food and keeping people sick, isn't there? So it starts to make you wonder a little bit at times.
Yeah, it sure does. Absolutely does.
Yeah, it really does. So you're a nutritionist now, and you're obviously helping people and trying to help them as best you can. Do you teach people then about carnivore diet, or do you kind of follow a more lower carb approach, or what's your take on it then?
So what I've found is some people like the whole carnivore approach, snap up, like it's, I'm going to do that, it's easy, I'm doing it, tomorrow they do it, and they're fine. Some people, you have to massage them through the change. So you have to help them to understand what food's doing to them. They have to feel that connection to what's going on when they eat almond meal, or if they eat processed foods, how it feels. I think some people have to feel that change before they can make the change. So it's kind of steering them along the journey of supporting them, giving them information, showing them YouTube videos to watch. I do community groups where I hold them in my local city council gardens, and I bring people to listen to what I have to say, and I give them workbooks to take home. And I'm just slowly hoping that one by one I'm making a big difference, or a difference to someone. And that's my take. That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find that people are generally on board with what you're saying, or do you find that there's more resistance than not?
There's a little bit of resistance because of the social norms, of drinking beer every night, or, eating big cakes for birthdays, and then having cakes every day. It's not like, it's hard for them to change. They want to change, but because of their cultural beliefs or just the way their family does things, it messes with the whole family dynamic sometimes, and it's a bit hard for them. So that's where I think someone like myself can help them along that pathway and just hold their hands a little bit until they can see through the fog and their mind starts to clear and they can make those choices for themselves, and they're not so tired, because some of them are tired and worn out and they can't make those choices easily. So they need someone to hold their hands a little bit.
Yeah. And do you mainly do like face to face, or is it online consultations?
It's online.
Do you do a mix, or what do you do?
Well, let's go back a little bit. I do online and I do a mix. So my poor Pilates ladies in my newsletters get a whole heap of stuff. I just sent one through today about, look at this YouTube, read that, go to this person. And I've sent a few of them off to a couple of GPs, and then they've come to me to help me with understanding why they're doing what they're doing, which has been great. I love doing that. So that's more one-on-one. And then I do some online work too. So that's where I am. I have got a little podcast that I'm starting in Perth. And I've got an online course that I'm just about ready to set off into the universe to see what comes back. yeah, that's where my space is.
Yeah, no, that's very exciting, especially, launching your own podcast.
Yeah,
That'll be exciting. And
yeah,
maybe if you'd have me, I'd love to
I
come
would
on and
definitely.
guest on
Yep,
that.
yep.
For sure. Let's definitely keep in touch there. I think podcasting is a really good way of getting information out there, and I think people seem to respond to it. I think
Mm.
pretty well. And I was having this conversation with someone last night that was interviewing me for theirs, and they were saying the same thing, that it just something about podcasting just seems to grab people, and they're maybe just a bit more likely to actually listen and kind of, oh yeah, maybe I'll have a think
Well, you
about
can
that.
you can kind of listen to it in your car while you're driving, or when you're running, or when you're riding your bike
Mm.
or walking. You can always have a podcast in on the train. They're easy and accessible, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They certainly are. And I mean, I certainly first started, making YouTube videos, and maybe I'm just not very exciting to watch. I don't know, but it didn't seem to get, particularly much traction.
Ah,
Whereas the podcast is
doing
definitely
very
taken
well.
off.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
doing
doing
well.
doing better than
Mm,
the YouTube videos. So I guess that's just, yeah, people like listening to just when they're commuting, and so I know I certainly listen to them in the car.
mm.
Do you do any group sessions? Because I know some people do group sessions and can find them useful. Others seem to find them not terribly useful with their
Do you mean
patients,
group sessions face to face?
or either or online, just for as far as
Yeah,
the nutrition
I
is
haven't
concerned.
ventured into that yet. Yeah, so I'm just kind of finding my way, finding what to do, but it's something that I've been
Hmm.
thinking about. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the online course. So what's the online course
The
around
online
then?
course is going to be why would I choose why would you choose low carb. I've started on the low carb way of living, just because I think I just wanted to talk from a layman's perspective and make it quite simple for people to understand how to shop, where to buy their food, why they wouldn't choose this, why they would choose that, how to think about, I think macros give people a hard time because you're so busy worrying about your macros and have you done the right thing. And for me, it's always been how has my body responded so I know that I've eaten the right mix. And then, of course, if you're eating a carnivore diet, all of that doesn't really matter anyway. So I feel like the nutrition gets a bit complicated, and people then give up because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and they hear, like you've said, stories from this person, stories from that person. There's always that nutrition expert in the group of your friends. So I feel like I just wanted to make it very basic, easy to understand, and relevant to what
Hmm.
is in the world at the minute. And people can make their own choice.
Yeah, no, I think just, yeah, basic education, guide is really useful, and there's so much out there. It can be difficult.
Mm.
People don't know where to look. They get confused. One thing says one thing, another person says another, and it can get a little bit confusing. So,
I
no,
would not like to be a new mum at the minute, or a mum with young children, because
oh yeah,
the pressure about what are their children eating is phenomenal. You would understand this.
oh yeah. I mean, we've got three young kids. We've got our oldest is 7, our youngest is 2. We've got another
Gorgeous.
one on the way as well.
Nice. Yeah.
And yeah, it's really hard
It's
as a
hard.
parent, because there's so much pressure from the schools. And
Mm.
our kids go to a great school. I won't say which. They,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
they
yeah.
they 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 go to a great school here in Brisbane, and um, they're doing fantastically. But it annoys me that they have to have these like brain booster snacks. When there's
Uh-huh.
zero evidence that kids
No,
need
no.
anything to boost their brain function.
Yep.
And to be fair, they don't want them having sugary foods,
Nice.
processed sugary foods. But then they get angry, they get upset with us parents when we don't put fruit for a
Yeah.
for a brain
Yeah.
booster, which
Yes.
is still sugar.
Yes, it
And then
is.
we're
It
and then
is.
we're saying, okay, mid morning snack, you have to have sugar, and then in the afternoon they're kind of just conked out because they've had a massive dose of
Yep.
sugar.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they're
Oh,
not at the point where they're going through lunch boxes or anything like that. But it raises the question, though, about with parents. And I know you may have seen this. Edinburgh in Scotland. For anyone that's not aware, Edinburgh have basically taken the steps to ban meat from
oh,
school. I think it's
truly.
schools. daycares and elderly facilities.
No,
Yeah,
because why?
because
Oh, oh, oh,
yeah, I haven't seen the
shocking.
rationale for that. It's just I've seen the headlines. I know Belinda Fettke's been putting out stuff on this as well. Yeah, it's insane. I mean, I can't possibly understand the rationale for that. I mean, you
Mm,
and I both know, of course, and I hope some of our listeners will know as well. Um, meat is so important for
mm,
our brain function. The saturated fat, the protein, the essential amino acids, the nutrient dense meat that kids need.
mm, mm, mm,
Elderly people need. They're
mm.
desperate for protein. And then we come back to the anti-nutrients from plant proteins like the lectins and so on that
Yeah,
really
pea
can cause a lot of
protein.
issues.
Yeah.
Exactly. And and there's evidence to support the use of things like saturated fat, in patients with dementia, for example.
Yes,
And there's
absolutely.
evidence that low carb diets, and particularly keto and most likely carnivore, can help patients with dementia. And dementia is rife in nursing homes. Saw a statistic the other day. It was something like 60% of nursing home residents have dementia.
No. Oh,
And it's getting worse. Dementia is now the number one in Australia. Anyway, I saw a newsletter from the Royal College of GPs. It's the number one health burden in over 65-year-olds. I think it was
wow, that's not far from me.
over
That's not far from my like
over
for me.
overtaking heart disease.
Wow.
In terms of kind of life lost and economic, down,
Yes.
fall and so
Yes.
forth.
And it
It's
is
now the
life
number
lost.
one.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
life lost,
absolutely.
isn't it?
And it's the most horrendous condition. Anyone that's experienced dementia, either themselves, if they're listening, or in loved ones or people they know, it's the most horrendous condition.
Mm-mm.
And I still remember my grandmother having dementia, and it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking.
Oh, but my dad passed away
And
from dementia. Yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty sad.
yeah,
It's pretty
but
sad.
it's insane that then there's organizations out there like this that are just banning meat.
Wow.
And it makes
Wow,
you
I
wonder
didn't
as
know
a
that. Yeah.
parent. Yeah, it's I mean, like, as a parent, I said to my wife the other day, I said, if our school bans meat, like, that I'm
Homeschool.
banning that school. Like, I'm just finding
Homeschool.
another school.
Yeah.
Like, there's just like insane, and but there's so much pressure. Like, they come home and they say, why can't I have what everyone else is eating? Why can't I have,
Yes, right. So
sweets
it's
and
already
chocolate
started. Yes.
and
Yes.
and so on, and that's very difficult because then you feel like the bad guy.
Mm, mm. You
Thankfully, our
do.
kids are actually pretty good, and
Good.
and now after about 4 months, yeah, basically since I started my journey on
Good.
a much more animal based diet,
Yes.
they actually don't want that junk food anymore for the most part. Look, they're
Mm.
still young kids,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Of course they are.
they haven't asked for like a Macca's or a KFC in probably 3 months.
What a wonderful
Uh,
grounding
about
for
a
them.
month into it,
Yeah.
so and they say, oh, can we have a lolly? No. Okay.
No, off they go.
There's no tantrums anymore. They're just, okay, fine, well, we thought we'd try our luck.
Yeah, I
um
can say with my family, I've noticed them slowly buying uh, the what is it, the Lakanto sugars, the sugar-free sugars to bake
right,
with, and they're kind of slowly changing over.
easing
That
in, yeah,
yeah, so it is. It's tricky, isn't it, as a parent? So I
yeah,
wouldn't like to have little kids.
it's no, it's very tricky. And one of my eldest daughter's friends is they're a vegan family, and
Mm-mm.
like, we're very nice with them, we're very friendly
Yes,
with them,
yeah,
and
of
so forth.
course.
But and they're saying, well, this girl says, well, meat's bad for you,
Mm.
and it's going to kill you. And then they're sitting there eating their lunchbox full of meat, and then they're coming home saying, why are you trying to kill me?
Oh
Um,
gosh,
and
it's
because, well, my
hard.
friend says it, so it must be true.
Must be true. Yes.
And then so we have to then try and educate them. But then how do you educate them by saying, well, that person's
Yeah.
incorrect, without then insulting those other
Yep.
people, and
Yep.
trying to explain to a
Not
5 and a
being
7-year-old,
judgmental yet.
why maybe they might be incorrect, and so on. So that's tough. There's a lot of societal pressures there.
Mm-mm.
Um, But I definitely noticed with my kids though that their behavior improved,
Wow.
their,
Okay.
dare I say it, their intelligence improved,
Yeah, it would do.
their like just energy levels
Being able
dramatically
to
improved
concentrate as
from
well
going
at
animal
school.
based.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. My 2-year-old, my youngest, we call her the carnivore baby because
Yeah.
pretty much from
Gorgeous.
like day one, she would just eat meat. Like she would just violently refuse like any kind of
Vegetables.
carbohydrate, any sugar, any just even carbs, like just
Mm.
anything. She was just
Oh,
no, not
just give me
interested.
meat. Feed the
It was
baby meat.
literally just meat, cheese, and butter. And she just goes to the fridge and just gets butter and eats it now.
Yeah.
And she's a bit
God.
more into carbs now that she's grown
Yeah.
up a bit, but she is so advanced for a 2-year-old. Like she's barely two, and she's toilet trained and almost
Wow.
overnight as
Gorgeous.
well.
Oh,
Like
nice. She was switched
that's
on.
crazy.
Yeah. She
Yeah,
had the
just totally with it. Her language
nice.
skills is like almost like a 4-year-old. Like
Great.
dexterity and everything, and like she's so muscular. We call her the tank.
Yeah.
she's
Right. Wow.
she's
Cool.
just so built.
How beautiful.
And she basically grew up carnivore now. Like maybe it's coincidence, I don't know, but the other two didn't really grow up like a carnivore. So and they are not built like a tank.
Not built like a tank.
So
Yeah.
and they are less coordinated, shall we say, and maybe a little bit less athletic.
Yeah.
Still highly intelligent,
Yeah. Yeah.
but a little bit different. So maybe it's coincidence. I don't know, but
You don't know. You
we'll
won't
see what
know.
this next one turns out
Yes, that's
like.
what I was going to say. Wait till
And
the fourth
then we'll
one.
have two and two to compare.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, is there anything, because we've been talking for about an hour now. I'm conscious
Yeah.
of your time,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
We spoke about quite a lot of stuff tonight. I think it's been a
We did.
really good conversation.
Yeah, we
Hopefully,
did.
our viewers and listeners are finding it useful. Is there anything else that you want to mention that we haven't covered already, Lynda? Maybe about your business or about the work that you're doing there?
Gosh, I suppose for me, it's just getting my name, getting people to understand my point of view, which I find all I can do is put this out through social media, but I'm also not real good at putting things on social media. I just don't remember to do it. I'm so bad. But I think just exposure, and your podcast is one way of doing that. So thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Really interesting
Yeah, no,
conversation.
you're very welcome. It really has. And no, I certainly feel you. I mean, I am terrible at social media as well.
Mm,
I'm getting better. I'm trying.
I'm trying to.
Um, yeah, but I feel like I need a social media manager to just kind of keep cracking the whip and making me
Yeah,
post stuff.
yeah.
How can people find you on social media so they can start to follow you and
So
encourage you to start posting?
my Facebook page is called The Whole Body because I feel like we are synergistically, spiritual, wellness, movement, mindset, nutrition. I feel like I am all about those things. So that's my handle, my Facebook name group. I have a website of the same name, and Instagram is the same. So I'm just on those platforms until
Mm.
my podcast launches. But then I'll have another little platform. I'll remember to put things on there. Yeah, so that's where I am. I'm Perth based, online or one-on-one. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's it.
perfect. So it's the whole body,
The Whole Body.
and your
Yeah,
website's thewholebody.me.
.me, yes, because I couldn't have .com.au. I had to have .me, which I thought was pretty cool because it's about the body being, the
Mm.
one me, the person. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, anyone out there that's listened to this, that's watched this episode, please go follow Lynda at The Whole Body, and thewholebody.me is her website there. Encourage her to go and post on her Instagram and social media. Definitely
Yeah.
keep an eye out for her podcast when that launches. And certainly, Lynda, get in touch if you're happy to have me on the show.
Sure,
I would be
definitely.
more than happy to come on
Thank you.
and talk to you again. It's been great fun having a chat with you this
Yeah,
evening, and
thank you.
hopefully our listeners have had great value today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, and have a good
You're
rest of your
you're
week.
very welcome.
All
Thank you,
right.
and you too. Take care of
All
yourself.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye.